Why do children tend to not like writing? Chris, do you want to start us off from a head teacher's perspective?
Yeah, I think basically it all comes down to the children having a purpose for their writing and also making sure that the children are engaged with a particular piece and that they've got the interest. And I think it's important that teachers inspire our children to write and also connect with authors. And I think Twitter does a wonderful job with that, and it's brought authors quite close to our children, which is wonderful. But yeah, I think engagement is really, really important, and making sure that our children have a love of writing, and we're not too nitpicky on the the modal verbs and the sentence structure, but actually giving them a love of writing is important, I think.
Yeah, so that audience and purpose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you think that
making them obviously see that it's not just a teacher that sees their work, but the wider world sees their work.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see why that would be very exciting. Cressida, I don't know if there's anything that jumps to mind in terms of why you think children, on the whole, it doesn't always grab them.
I'm an ambassador for the National Literacy Trust, and I love that organisation because they do a whole load of research to back up their charity work. And one of the facts that I love is that it's about the joy of writing. It's the same with reading as well. Statistically speaking, a child who reads for pleasure is likely to be more economically successful than one who doesn't, yeah? And it's the same with writing. Writing for pleasure, for the joy of it. And I love that fact. It also cuts across all social backgrounds. It's how you do it. And I get loads of people writing to me and saying, my 7-year-old, I got a heartbreaking one, my 7-year-old grandson used to love writing stories and now he doesn't. Now he doesn't. School has put him off. School has put him off. Now he stops to think, am I starting with the right word? You know, he's worrying about his handwriting, he's worrying about his spelling, and he's lost the joy of writing. So I go into a lot of schools, and I go into schools and go into schools and I say, who would like a book, 15 minutes every Friday to have one special book in which you can write whatever you want. No rules, no marking, just fun. The teacher can't mark it. And I can't tell you, these little kids, you see a little forest of hands waving. They want that so much. They want a space in which they can write whatever they want.
You're saying really it's the rules and the testing and the rigour, the pressure that the teachers are under that actually puts them off.
What I'm saying is that I'm not saying that you don't need that aspect. I'm saying there needs to be somewhere, some part of their lives where it's about the joy of it. Yeah? And so I called this campaign Free Writing Friday. I started a one-woman national campain called Free Writing Friday. And it's very rewarding. I mean, teachers are trying it. And I made it 15 minutes because I know the pressure that teachers are under nowadays. They have to have to tick all these boxes. And so 15 minutes I thought was an achievable target that you could fit in, where for once the kid wasn't being marked, had one space where when it wasn't about their handwriting, yeah? And I had this myself. In my books, Wizard Once, my latest books, I make the heroine, one of the heroes, the female hero, Wish, is dyslexic. Yeah, and I know if you're dyslexic, you know, because my sister was dyslexic, how that can put you off writing. But I wasn't dyslexic, but my spelling and my handwriting was terrible. But I had a lovely teacher, Miss Mellows, couldn't make it up really, Roald Dahl, name, yeah, who allowed me to have this one book, exactly that, where I could write whatever I wanted. And it was the first time I realised being a writer wasn't about your spelling and your handwriting, it was about your ideas.
Isn't it?
Anyway, that's a very long answer, sorry.
Very good.
Fascinating, Anthony.
Sorry, it's something I care passionately about because I know there are so many kids out there with fantastic ideas who are being put off because they can't do the handwriting and they can't do the spelling, and so they think, I'm not a writer.
So
And
you could have been
Sorry.
deemed sort of inadequate. You'd be a working towards child who wouldn't even be average back in the day then if your spelling and your handwriting was poor. So that could have sort of knocked the life out of you as a writer. Dismay, but it sounds like you had a great teacher that...
one good teacher can transform a kid's life. That is the thing. One good teacher, and for good or for bad.
Fabulous.
I remember the bad ones as well. I mean, I don't know about you.
Anthony,
Do you?
sorry, yes.
I know. Am I turned on? Yes, I am. I totally agree with everything. I don't need to say anything. I just need to sit here and just listen to Cressida because she's said it all. But it's interesting, isn't it, how many writers you meet who say exactly the same thing, that everything begins with a teacher. That's what I'm always saying. But the way I put it when I'm talking in schools is that a bad teacher can spoil your day. A good teacher changes your life.
Yeah.
And isn't it, I can sit here now and think back 45 years to Mr. Helliwell, Mr. Alden and Mr. Brown, and they were the three teachers who found the writer in me and encouraged me and gave me the sort of the confidence to write. And I totally agree with you, Instantly, but that began with not feeling that I was being marked all the time, but it wasn't just about spelling and grammar. It still isn't. I have an editor for all that, which is great. I want to pick up on just a couple of the things that you said, Cressida, because I think you're so right about this, getting kids to write.
Yeah.
You mentioned joy and you mentioned space. And those are the two things that I think, and I know I'm talking to a crowd in Sydney who knows much more about this subject than I do, so this is only a sort of my take on it, is that the national curriculum, the main fault of it is that it has taken those two abstracts out of school life to an extent by making so many demands on both teachers and kids. And what we don't have in our schools anymore is the space, your word, for the joy, for the pleasure. The National Literacy Trust has pointed to the fact that quite a lot of children go through school now without ever reading a book for pleasure. We had, when we were young, silent reading. And of course, writing and becoming a writer and enjoying writing always begins with reading and understanding books. And the other thing I would talk about is story. But it's not just about verbs and sentence structure and getting things into the right order and having good language. It is about having a story that you wish to convey. And if you have a child who loves football or flowers or space or cookery, and you get them to write about what it is that they love and what they react to, and they have the pleasure of it and the fun of it, that is where writing begins.
It doesn't even have to be a story. It could be a comic strip. It could be a game. It could be about, whatever they want. They finding their voice. And it's also about creativity. It's about, the one thing, okay, in the Far East, they have a problem with entrepreneurs, yeah? They're looking to America and the UK, as it was, because we are better at producing entrepreneurs and creative thinking. The creative industries make £92 billion a year for this country, yeah? Outperforming the rest of the economy by double, yeah? Meanwhile, in its wisdom, the government has introduced the English Baccalaureate, meaning we have the lowest uptake of art subjects in 2016 that we've ever had.
Easing arts
Where,
out
so
of the
there's
mainstream. Drama, music, all these things. Education cannot be pragmatic. Education is not just about getting a place in a Russell Group university or getting a job. It is also about self-development, self-awareness, and that, of course, is what writing is about and what reading is about. Just, one of the things that always astonishes me, and I've said this before, why is it that in the United Kingdom it is not compulsory by law for there to be a full-time professional librarian in every single secondary school in the country? That's what we need to have. That's where it all begins.
I think absolutely.
Yes, because schools have to make cuts in their budgets, and the first person to go is the librarian. And this is not the fault of the schools. It's
you're so many people nodding away and so many people agreeing with you.
But the library connects every single part of the school. When you're talking about the kid who likes football or the kid who likes rocket science or whatever it is, both those subjects, the lines to them come to the library because that's where you'll find the books about both. So the library is the beating heart of the school. And when I visit schools, I don't do it very often anymore, I could describe the library in a sort of a Sherlock Holmes way the moment I walk in through the front door. Because the first child you see, what the artwork that's on the wall in the corridor, it tells you whether the school has a lively, active, well-budgeted library or not. The schools that do have special kids, and those kids shine. You see it immediately. You must have seen that, Cressida.
Yeah, of course.
Anthony, I'm
But it's a question
fascinated.
of
As I said, a lot of people are in agreement here, but I'm fascinated here from Chris on this, because Chris is under serious pressure, like a lot of
Yeah.
head teachers. You've got to get the grammar right. They've got to know what adverbials are and subordinate clauses.
Yeah.
And yet, I saw you nodding. Like, it's impossible
Yeah,
almost not to agree with what you're saying. But how do we get a balance, Chris?
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. And it was one of the first things that we did is bring back our library and make it an active library that the children constantly use, and it's not just there for show. But in terms of writing, it's so important that the children have that reading for pleasure, that they have something to hang on
And
to.
the space to make mistakes. I think part of the thing about
Absolutely, yeah,
creativity
absolutely.
is the space, we're always marking them on getting things right. And actually creativity is about getting things wrong sometimes. Trying to something and getting it wrong. That's what a space in which you can
Yeah,
try
we-
and not be marked
I
on.
agree, and sometimes we can overmark, can't we? We can overmark spellings, and we want our children to use powerful vocabulary and language, and we love it when we do that, so let's not discourage them from that, and let's just harness that and let them go with the... And I love the Fridays. We might start that, but letting the children have the space to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
And yes, you do have to teach about modal verbs and things like that, but you have to do that when you're modelling the writing yourself, so you're doing it at the same time. And it is important, because unfortunately, at the end of year 6, they all have to take the same test and they have to do that. So, but it's about making sure that we do it in an engaging and interesting way. And I say to all my teachers that, the important thing is that you know your children, know what makes them tick, what's their interest, and if you can grab that interest, they'll write and write.
And actually,
and
Chris,
write.
that leads on beautifully to the fact you've got 2 of your Year 6 writers here today,
Yes.
haven't you? And actually, really, they're the experts. Let's ask them. Let's ask them what makes writing exciting. Should we get them on? Davina and Jared, do you want to come on, you two? Do you want to shake my hand? Do you want to go and have a seat? Have a seat. You've got a space there next to Mr. Willan. Have a seat. There we go. All very exciting. So, fantastic. So you may have been listening, and we've been talking a lot about the importance of making writing exciting for children. And you're the experts, really. I guess my question to you is, how can we do it? How do we make writing exciting for children?
It's probably when, say the teachers are telling you to do, write instructions on how to make toast every day. You don't want to do that. You want something that you really want to do. So, really, you've got to make it so you're doing something you want to do.
Lovely. So tapping into your interests. And is that what
Yeah.
happens at your school?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's sort of it's like your mind's just exploding with all the ideas where it's just all over the paper. It's just what you thought of, what you want.
Yeah, fantastic. Jared, have you got anything to add to that? What makes writing exciting for you?
Letting yourself get engaged in what you're writing, letting your imagination go wild, not having a set topic so you've only got limits, making it so you haven't got limits.
So that freedom,
Yeah.
that freedom, just as you were saying. Yes, fantastic. Yeah, brilliant. No, that's absolutely, super answers. And it's great to hear from children how we can make writing more exciting. Now, we've actually got, I'm being bombarded here, we're getting some questions through, which I think I might be able to get onto there. Let me just see if I select that, tick that. I think we have a question. And there we go. That's a great question. Was there a teacher at school that inspired you to write? Anthony,
Right,
was there a teacher that...
I've already mentioned three of them, Mr. Brown, Mr. Helliwell, and Mr. Alden. And they were my English teacher, my drama teacher, and my sort of literature teacher. We had writing and literature as separate subjects. And yeah, they encouraged me to write and brought out the writer in me. And it was all just a question of getting a little bit of just encouragement and praise. I wasn't a clever child. I was a very stupid kid. And in my first school, the teachers seemed to take a delight in crushing me and never giving the opportunity. So they just simply encouraged me by liking what I had written, by encouraging me to stand up and read the stories out loud. That doesn't happen in schools anymore now. Why don't kids get the opportunity to actually to talk, to perform their stories, rather than just have them marked by the teacher so that everybody can hear them? And that's what my teachers did there. But as I said, the most important thing they did for me was to encourage my reading. How about this book, Anthony? You might like this one. Why are you reading that sort of, just gradually getting me to build up so that my use of language and my understanding of story structure, character, was fed by reading good writers who were doing that.
So that grammar is almost part of the great book, drip feeding that into what you're passionate
Reading
about.
is a journey. Reading is an adventure. It begins in the foothills. And when I started reading at my first school, I was reading Tintin because I wasn't actually good enough to read whole books. I wasn't clever enough. But that was getting me into story. Tintin is genius.
You say clever enough? No. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a way of looking at it. I mean, actually, it's like Calvin and Hobbes uses very long words and things. It's just because it's more visual.
What I'm saying is that I couldn't manage whole books, so I started with cartoon books.
Yeah.
From there, I then went into Willard Price, adventure stories. From Willard Price, I went into James Bond and Ian Fleming. That helped me with my career later on, as you can imagine. From there, it was into etc., etc. And now my reading goes from, I don't know, I'm very fond of Stephen King, and I like, Lee Childs and thrillers, but I also read Trollope and Dickens and Tolstoy. And so therefore the whole world of literature is open to me, which is a fantastic resource. Don't forget, you can only write, if you're going to write, whether you're a kid like these kids here, or whether you are somebody in our position, you can only write if you have something feeding your batteries. And that might be experience, it might be life, it might be all sorts of things. But for the actual tools of writing, the words, the ability to hear the balance in a sentence, the ability to find different ways of saying something, you need to read. And that's what those three teachers gave me.
Yeah. The joy of reading, I think that's...
Absolutely. And just listening to you speak, I would also throw in there that I think passion is contagious. And if you've got teachers who are passionate and excited about the books that they're sharing and the things that they're teaching, that just comes across. It's contagious. The children will pick up on that, I think.
And I remember every book that a teacher read aloud to me. I remember every single one. And again, how you find time in your curriculum to do that. But I remember every single book that was read aloud, and teacher would set 10 minutes a day at the end of the day and read a little bit. And I remember them all. And it was about, again, a kid is struggling to read. Books can so often become to mean something to a kid that makes them feel stupid. How can you love something that makes you feel stupid? Yeah? The act of decoding. Film and telly is magically beamed into your head without you having to make an effort. Yeah? No wonder kids love it. Whereas the act of learning to read can become associated with struggle. Yeah, particularly with parents, they try, it become a struggling. I always used to listen to my kids reading in the morning because they were knackered by the time they get back from school, yeah? But over breakfast, they were a bit perky, so it wasn't associated with struggle, yeah? So you can read, I encourage parents to read aloud to their kids way beyond the age they can read for themselves. Teachers, anything you can do, again, so that they just enjoy the story, they enjoy books, rather than associating books with something that makes them feel stupid. How can you, and that's why I stuff my books full of pictures, my How to Train Your Dragon and Wizards of Once books, full of pictures, again, to give the kid, because kids are much more visual nowadays, and so to give the kid a payoff, so I don't dumb down. Kids are just as bright as they ever were, but I give them a payoff, because a bit like your Tintin thing, so the kids so I don't dumb down, but I make the storylines very exciting and give them a visuals all along so that they have a payoff as they go along, and to make that transition into just thinking books are wonderful things.
You make a very good point, say so,
Thank you, Anthony.
which is that, of course, it's not all down to the teachers.
No,
but
it's the
actually,
parents,
one of
yeah.
the major things about getting children to write and to read is getting books into the homes. NLT, according to the National Literacy Trust, 1 in 10 homes in this country don't have a single book in them at all. And that's a sort of a frightening statistic. And of course, reading to children, which you brought up, Cressida, very, very good point. The fact that your children, of course, don't share their computer games with you, but there is a time in their life when they will share their books with you. And when I was bringing up my children, reading to them at night and sharing stories was, of course, a huge encouragement for them. One of my sons writes a lot now, and I think that began there. And I still remember the day when my child wouldn't let me read to him anymore because he felt he was too old. Well, he was 27, but it was a sad moment. A closing door.
Yeah. So I got off the track. Miss Mellows, who didn't mind my spelling or my handwriting, in my Free Writing Fridays books that I did with her, she didn't call them free writing, but I was writing about magic and fairies. What I'm doing now, I've got all these pictures of fairies and sprites, and I've turned them into Wizards of Once, and DreamWorks are making an animation out of it, all starting from some silly little book that I was scribbling in when I was 9. So, where the spelling was terrible, the handwriting was dreadful, yeah? But it was about creativity. I was learning to be creative, yeah? And then there was lovely, there was Miss Mellows, there was lovely Miss MacDonald, my history teacher, who said, imagine, this was in secondary school, imagine if you were a Viking. She wasn't supposed to be, supposed to be a history lesson, but she got me writing stories about Vikings age 12, yeah? Again, yeah. I mean, there we go. Yeah. So just a few encouraging teachers who, can make all the difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris, is there one? I mean, looking at less than sort of 30 seconds, is there a teacher that stood out for you? I mean, you became a teacher and then a very successful head teacher. So, sort of, what inspired you?
Yeah, there was one that inspired me, but then there was probably 10 or 11 that inspired me to do it better. So I did that, really, to be honest. But yeah, there was one English teacher that I had at secondary school. He was fabulous, but he what we've said this afternoon, really, is he let me write. He let me enjoy it. I could write about anything that I wanted. I was allowed to make mistakes, and I didn't feel pressured. And he gave me the confidence, to write about everything. So yeah,
Just to throw in there, if you're interested in Chris's story and the extraordinary culture he's built around writing in his school, do pop along to our stand. I think G60 we're on.
Yeah.
Come and sort of say hello. It's a great big Pobble balloon. Chris, will you be on there a bit later?
Yeah, I was just about to mention, when we're talking about reading as well, we've just changed to whole class reading rather than guided reading, and that has had a huge impact in terms of our results. Because we actually think that our children need to have that vocabulary. They need to understand that vocabulary at whatever age and whatever standard they're at. But it kind of means that our children are being exposed to wonderful writing, and they all have How to Train Your Dragon. They have that book. And then we delve into it. We've got wonderful teachers at our school, and they're getting to character, and they read the book, and the children answer questions on that, and it's not just kind of guided reading, carousel activities, but it's whole class reading, and everybody and every child are immersed in that book.
Brilliant.
And that has had an impact.
Fantastic. I mean, I'm very conscious of the time. What I think would be fabulous, you've got a great opportunity. You've got a lot of people listening in on video, loads of people in this hall. A lot will be going back to their schools, working with their children. If you could just give them, maybe in 20 seconds, just one nugget of advice on how to make writing special or exciting, what would that one thing be? Anthony, would you like to start if there was just one thing?
I would say it's about sharing an enthusiasm rather than trying to flog a dead horse. That's what I've always thought. But actually, the greatest aspect of teaching, and that's why I would love, if I hadn't been a writer, I would have loved to have been a teacher, is that moment where you connect with a child and you share an enthusiasm. And it isn't an enthusiasm for adverbials, it's an enthusiasm for the story of the horse, the rocket, the whatever it might be. It's that moment of connection.
And you put it beautifully before. You said it
A
was about
child is in
making...
control when a child is writing, especially if that child is writing about things that they love and which mean something special to them.
Exactly.
That's my notion.
Perfect. That's exactly what you said. It was beautifully done. Cressida.
And they have a lot to teach us as well. That's what I find interesting going in. Going into so many schools is that children are actually the most creative people in the world. They're natural rule breakers.
I'm inspired by that.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm inspired
And you were saying
by
about
going
the
in.
notebook.
And
Having a
the
notebook.
Free Writing Friday, please,
Yeah.
try Free Writing Friday in
Chris,
your
have
school.
you-
I'm getting so many teachers writing in saying how the children love it, and I'm getting the teachers saying they're carrying on writing in break. They say, please, can we carry on writing in break? That's about finding the joy of it.
Absolutely.
And in that one space, some teachers write in and say, but I don't know how to mark it. I really don't think that for that one space, that's what that's about. It's about trying to encourage, to just find some joy in putting pen in the paper
Absolutely.
and just finding their own voice and writing about games or comics, as I say.
Yeah.
Anything that they want to write about.
Brilliant. Chris,
and
one nugget of
we
advice.
obviously use Pobble, and Pobble has been the platform really for our children here to be published authors. So it's about, for me, it's about sharing the writing to the world. It's letting the children care about their writing, but also being proud of their writing and be proud to take risks with their writing.
Brilliant. And I guess we've got to ask you too. Is there one bit of advice you could give all these teachers about making writing exciting? What would it be?
I'd probably say when you're marking work, don't just put I don't like this, I don't like this. Put encouragement, like put I like this, but could you make it better instead of putting them down?
Absolutely brilliant. Can we give them all a round of applause, please? All of our brilliant. Thank you very much.
Before you go, Henry, I've got a quick question for you. Bett and Educate have been partnering on some questions between industry and education to really open that dialogue up. And if you're interested about those advocacy questions, you can find them on the Bett website. Question I've got for you is, how does Pobble make educators' lives easier? And I'm really interested in that from a senior leader position.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, we're very proud that we do make teachers' lives easier. And it started very much with my own class, with my own year sixes. And there's a number of ways, but I think the one key way is teachers spend so much time and effort searching for impact and making wonderful displays and all these hours spent hoping for that impact. And a lovely thing about Pobble, it's very, very simple. It's very special, very exciting, and it delivers that impact. It makes teachers' lives easier just by using Pobble and celebrating children's writing with the world.